Like I said, if you're a light shining bright in the middle of the night, all the moths come to you, not just the good ones. Over the course of my life, I couldn't understand what all the assassination attempts were about, really, until after my mom died. And I realized a whole bunch of things. But notwithstanding, none of those events panned out for any of those people. And in fact, I guarantee you, most of those people, wherever they are in the world right now, they're either dead or they're fucked up in their life because of what they tried to do to me. Their karma is so damn bad, they're never going to recover from it. That's why things like earthquakes, blizzards, and stuff like that never affected me either. And this is the hurricane, blizzards, and earthquake video. Again, I'm working off a script because there was so much information to remember. I decided to write it down so I wouldn't forget. 1976, hurricane in Palm Beach. My grandmother, my brother, and I went to a shelter and stayed there for like 3 days as this huge hurricane passed over us. Everybody was afraid. I was like, nah, I'm not afraid. Fuck it. I was a little kid. What the hell did I care? 1977, hurricane in Martinique. That was strange because that night my brother had tried to tell me, my older brother, he was sleeping in the same room with me. My little brother slept in the room with my parents because he was still too young. But my older brother told me that I was, again, he was always trying to degrade me. He told me I was a coward and I would never amount to anything and this, and that, and the other thing. And I was like, why do you even say it? I don't even remember what my response was. But that night, oh, and the windows were locked because the hurricane came and, my grandmother was there with us and my parents, and they all went around the house to lock everything up really good, okay? So that night I woke up and my brother's there, all afraid, awake. And I was like, why are you afraid? He goes, I'm afraid it's a hurricane. I'm like, come on, don't be afraid. Even if the window were to open and the rain and the wind were to come in, it wouldn't do anything to you. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, and from my bed, I don't know why, but in that moment, the window opened, like the locks were undone, and the window just popped open, and the wind and the rain came in, howling, oh, and my older brother started crying, oh, and I was just like, I see, I told you. Man. In 1978, one of the worst blizzards that ever hit Boston, again, everybody's all freaked out. I had to go to the Hyatt hotel to stay for like 2, 3 days. I don't remember. I had the best time. I was like running around different floors, pressing the buttons on all the elevators and stuff. But once again, it's just a blizzard. It's no big deal. You know how to manage your emotions? You're okay. In 1993, I lived in a place called Troutdale, Oregon. And there just happened to be an earthquake there, a strong one. And our house was at the base of a small hill. And that earthquake caused a boulder to roll down the hill. And it almost hit the house like if, we were asleep in the house when it happened. It was early morning. I remember it because I was having a dream about my friend Tom Kelly, being a rock star. He was down the rock stage, all of a sudden the stage shaking and whatever, and I wake up and I'm like, what the fuck? Oh, it's an earthquake. Oh my God. And we walked outside and the boulder could have hit our house, but it didn't. I already told you about this in another video, 1998, about near-death experiences with Hurricane Mitch on the Rio Pacuar in Costa Rica. So I'm not going to mention that one too much here, but suffice it to say that I was whitewater rafting at night on the most dangerous river in Latin America in the middle of Hurricane Mitch, one of the most dangerous hurricanes ever recorded. Survived. No problem. 20 years later, I went back to Costa Rica and went to go hang out with the same tour guides who I used to hang out with 20 years earlier. And we were like, hey, let's go on a whitewater rafting trip. Okay, let's go. So we go. Same river, Rio Pacuar. Except this time it's Hurricane Nate. We didn't know. Hurricane Nate rolled up on us, so we stayed for the night on the side of the river at this little encampment with these little huts. And we stayed there, and the river rose. The river level rose so much it was like holy shit. The next day when we left out, when we got in the rafts again, that segment of the river should have taken us like 3 hours to do, but we did it in 45 minutes because the water was so raging. There wasn't even a rapid. It was just straight water going down towards the Caribbean. And those guides there in a town called Pejivalle, they'll tell you the truth about those hurricanes and our experience in whitewater rafting. In 2007, this is pretty crazy. You know, I'd split from my ex. I had left my job, and I was in Eugene, Oregon, and I got the call from my employer saying, "Hey, we have a last paycheck here for you, by the way, in Bend, Oregon." I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." I didn't have any money. I was in Eugene. I was like figuring out what to do. So I took the bus up to from Eugene to Forest Camp, I think it's called, and I started walking. I had some newspapers, and it was snowing, and I gathered some twigs and I put them under my poncho to get them dry, because I had a feeling that nobody was going to pick me up, and nobody picked me up that night. So I kept walking up the highway until I got to this point where I could walk off into the forest, where it seemed like it was, you know, sheltered from the blizzard. And you know, I used to do a lot of camping and backpacking when I was younger. I have extreme amounts of survival skills. So when the blizzard really hit, I was already, you know, and I had a small book of matches. That's it. I didn't even have a lighter. I had started a small fire, and I had my poncho, I had my denim jacket, I had my backpack, my rucksack, and I kept the fire going all night. And I said to myself, when the morning comes, the first car I see is going to be a friend of mine. Because obviously, if the first person to pick me up, the first car I see will be somebody who's obviously a friend, because otherwise they wouldn't pick me up. On some level, you have to be a friend. And so I survived the whole night in the middle of a blizzard in 2007 because of my stupid ex. And sure as shooting, when I walked out of the forest in the morning and I put myself on the road, fucking snow everywhere, you know. I was like, oh my God. The first person I see is a guy in a four-wheel drive truck. And he's my friend Cully, who's also going through a divorce at that time. And he, you know, comes to a halt and looking at me. And I go to the door and I'm like, Cully! And he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I know, I'm asking myself the same question. And I got in his car and I explained it to him. And he's like, wow, you are lucky you are alive. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I told myself all night the first person to come would be a friend, and here you are. And unbelievable, the synchronicity of it. Seriously, how does that work? How does that happen? So in 2007, when I went to Zihuatanejo finally in April, I went from Oregon to Phoenix, sold a bunch of pot in Phoenix, and got some money together that I had taken from Oregon to Phoenix with a buddy of mine. And with the pot money, I just got on a bus, a one-way ticket to Zihuatanejo from Phoenix. It was a direct shot. And I get to Zihuatanejo, and one of the first things that happens there within like a month's time is a massive hurricane. And we're stuck in this house. I was 42 years old, and I had a 21-year-old girlfriend. It was pretty cool. I was living the life then. I didn't have any money really, but I was an English teacher and a yoga teacher then, and I had this hot young girlfriend, and a hurricane comes, so we just kind of hung out in the house for 3 days straight, and like ate whatever food there was there, and started to get hungry because the hurricane was so. I don't remember what the name of that hurricane was, but it was so unbelievable that it was like. Nobody was out. Nobody was making food. Nobody was opening their stores. It was just like whatever you had in your home, that was what you had, you know, and that was it. Survived that hurricane. In 2008, from 2008 to 2011, I don't even remember how many hurricanes or earthquakes I survived in Oaxaca. Most of the earthquakes in Oaxaca were minor. Um, I say minor because they were like 5.2 or 5.3, you compared to other earthquakes that I later experienced in Mexico City in 2017. When I was living in Mexico City, I experienced the two major earthquakes in Mexico City. And believe you me, those earthquakes scared me because everything was swaying, buildings and trees alike. It was just like wavy gravy, and I was like, holy shit! But I went back into my home, and curiously enough, at the time, I had a girlfriend, and I had a girlfriend at that time, and curiously enough, in our house, nothing had moved. I couldn't believe it. Nothing had fallen off the shelves or the tables. Everything was still in its place, and I was like, and she and I were like astounded. We couldn't believe it. I was like, how did that happen? She said, I don't know. How did everything outside move and get wavy, but inside this house where we live, nothing moved? Very weird. So I think that's it for hurricanes, blizzards, and earthquakes. I haven't really experienced any other natural disasters like floods or massive fires. Um, but I think that's good for this video. Natural disaster video.